Well, thank you very much indeed. Please be seated. Can I welcome all councillors and all officers to this meeting of Bolsover District Council. Before we move on to the full council agenda, I'd just like to ask you to note the very sad passing of Councillor Tony Bennett. Tony represented Bolsover District Council and Old Bolsover Town Council for many years and was an instrumental voice throughout her time as a member and always had the best interests of her constituents at heart. Tony was heavily involved with the leisure department, always supporting their events, sports sessions and activities for young people and for the whole of her constituency, and was a huge supporter of workers' rights. Our thoughts and condolences are today with Tony's friends and family. And now for all of those who can I ask you please, just for a moment to stand to mark the sad passing of Councillor Tony Bennett. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Right, just to advise you that this meeting is being recorded for the purpose of the minutes. It is possible that later we might be joined when we get to item 11 or possibly just before that by the BBC who are interested in item 11, the debate on local government reorganisation. Can I also remind members about the adherence, please, to the council's procedures and rules when speaking? And just to remind you, because we haven't met now for a month or two, that means that when you wish to speak and you've indicated and been invited to speak, you do advise councillors as you stand up of your name, the ward you represent, and then please feel free then to speak. That is important just to make sure that everybody knows who everybody is, etc., etc. And it is the appropriate protocol and procedures to follow. If we may now, can we please turn to the agenda, which you will have in front of you. And we will start, if we may please, with item 1, which is apologies for absence. And in advance of the meeting, I have received apologies from councillors Jane Bryson, Councillor Tom Kirkham and Councillor Clive Mosby. Does any other member wish to bring to our attention, please, any other apologies for absence?
Mary Dooley and Paul Cooper.
Thank you very much indeed. So that's Councillor Mary Dooley and Councillor Paul Cooper. Are there any other apologies, please? No, thank you very much indeed. If we may now move on to item 2, which is declarations of interests. Members who have any interest should have declared them to the governance manager in advance of the meeting. However, I will ask again, in advance of the meeting, can members please raise your hand if you do have any interest to declare? Yes, Councillor Alan Bailey.
Alan Bailey, Clown East Ward. Number 7, motions. Councillor Fritchley is going to talk about the mine workers pension scheme. I receive the mine workers pension scheme. Do I have to declare an interest on this?
Are you able to advise us, Sarah, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah Sternberg, Solicitor to the Council. Yes, you can declare, but I think on this occasion you can stay, speak and vote. It is in other interest.
Thank you.
Councillor Josbury?
Councillor Josbury, I'll receive a pension as well.
Thank you. Councillor,
Derek Adams, Bolsover South. I also receive a
thank you.
pension. Thank you.
Ditto, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, okay, thank you. I think we'll take the necessary advice from the monitoring officer at the time of any vote that needs to be taken, okay? You're all right with that, Sarah? Thank you. All right. Thank you very much indeed for your diligence in raising that issue. Much appreciated. Okay, we'll move on then. I have some announcements to make this morning under item 3. Just first of all, to bring to your attention that tomorrow, the 9th of September, it has now become custom and practice for the last 5 or 6 years for mayors or chairs of local authorities at 9 a.m. on the 9th of September to raise the Union flag in front of their premises to celebrate the work of the emergency services and first responders. And tomorrow I will be outside here at 9 a.m. to do that on your behalf. And if any officers or members are available, it will be lovely to see you here tomorrow. Hopefully it's not going to be raining too early. I think they've forecast rain tomorrow, so it could be a damp occasion, but hopefully not. So if you are able to give your time or be present, that would be lovely. I'd love to see you. And I will say just a few words to mark the contribution that those people make to our society and to our lives. So that's the first one. Members will also please be aware that the presentations of the honorary aldermen have been delayed, obviously due to the COVID-19 pandemic and due to the capacity within the council chamber. And therefore it has been decided to hold the ceremonial presentation of honorary aldermen at an alternative event to be confirmed in the near future. So we've not forgotten it. It will go ahead, but not at this venture, this venue. Okay. And that concludes my announcements at this stage. I just would like to use this opportunity, however, on behalf of Councillor Mary Dooley, who's had to send her apologies this morning. She was involved very much with her own community at Pinxton in running an event and wanted me to publicly acknowledge the contribution of our leisure services staff. So she's asked me to read out on behalf of herself a letter of thanks to Tom, Gracie and Isabel, 3 of our employees. On Sunday, the 3 members of staff from Bolsover District Council's leisure team attended Pinxton Parish Council's Fun Day, which took place between 10 and 6 p.m. What a team. They were brilliant. There was a crazy golf and an adventure track that entertained up to 40 children at any one time, and they worked hard all day. A big thank you from Pinxton Parish Council. So that's nice, positive news. So I'm sure we're all pleased to hear that. Right, if we could now, I'd like to move on to item 4, which is minutes of the last meeting. And before I move on to seeking a mover and a seconder for their approval, I would like you to turn, if you would, in your set of documents to page 11. About 2/3 of the way down the page, within the debate about the sale of land at Glapwell. So it says, it's the paragraph that starts, the Director of Development pointed out for the information of members that the sale of the land had been scrutinised when the decision had been called in and reviewed by Growth Scrutiny Committee in 2020. What is not written there, and what was said, and I have the transcript in front of me, so I am confident it was said, is that the Director of Development confirmed at this point that the sale of the land had already been completed on the 21st of June, and that the procedures were being undertaken by officers to process that sale. And I am proposing that that be added into this copy of the minutes, so that the minutes are a complete and true and accurate record. And I am moving that from the chair. Councillor Patricia Clough.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tricia Clough, Old Tucknell Ward. As a matter of accuracy, and because there has been such significant interest amongst the constituency in light of this, I actually watched the debate again this morning, and at 1 hour, 10 minutes, the chair stated that he was advised by officers that for information, all members should be advised that the piece of land had been sold to the developer, and that was actually transacted quite recently. At the same time, the chair asked Grant Galloway to email all members with a copy of the statement. To date, I've not received that email.
I'm sure that the officer Grant Galloway will have noted that, and if he wants to speak, he's more than welcome to. Grant?
Yeah, we've had correspondence on this recently. Councillor Clark will understand that. The apology was made to him, the commitment was given, and that's on its way in due course.
Thank you very much indeed. So with that assurance, I have moved the minutes as a true record. Does that receive a seconder, please? Thank you. It's been seconded by Councillor Heffer. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you very much indeed. That appears. Are there any against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. If we can then please move on to item 5. Questions from the public. I advise you there are no questions from the public today. Questions from members. I can also confirm that we've received no questions from members today. And so we move on, if we may, please, to item 7, which is motions. And we start, if we may, please, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 10, I confirm we have 2 motions to consider. I now invite Councillor Steve Fritchley to move the first motion. Councillor Fritchley, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and good morning, colleagues. This particular motion came as a request from one of our MPs, and you know, I delight in actually presenting it to council. The old debate has been rumbling on, it seems like an eternity, and obviously when miners or when unions agreed to this, it was many years ago, and you know, a lot of turmoil at that particular time. But since then, you know, union membership has got smaller. You know, people in receipt of mine workers' pension scheme has reduced. The actual pot has got bigger, and there's been 1 or 2 things, and it resulted, colleagues, chair in the House of Commons Business, Energy and Industry Strategy Committee making 18 recommendations. And I'd like this council, chair, to support those 18 recommendations en bloc. Thank you, chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Does the proposal receive a seconder, please? Yes, it's been seconded by Councillor Derek Adams. Thank you very much indeed. Does anybody wish to speak on the motion? Yes, Councillor Andrew Josbury, please.
Councillor Andrew Josbury, Southampton Ward. I wholeheartedly support this motion. Since this 50-50 deal, successive governments must have looked at this with no moral compass, knowing it's a crappy deal for the people who have paid in, the miners, who were hoping that the investment would give them a good retirement. 4.4 billion to date is a shameful amount for the government to take out of this pension. This money should be in the pockets of the miners or their families. I call for this council to write to and urge the MP Mark Fletcher, who, as far as I know, voted to keep this 50-50 deal, to look at the demographic of his district, a district where virtually every village and town had a mine, and his constituents who of who were a great number were minors and families of minors. The MP should stand up and support his constituents for a change in the miners' pension, so that it would be fairer to the people who invested in it, including myself. There were 6 members of my family who were miners. There's only me left. Like, I'm the only one living. Are we going to wait 20 years until they are all gone, until all the miners have gone, before anything is done? So I wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you very much indeed, councillor Josbury. Are there any other members wishing to speak on for or against the motion or contribute to the debate? Yes, councillor Peter Roberts.
It's Councillor Peter Roberts from Whitwell Ward. Before I start, this is Dad used to be an ex-miner and he wanted me to say this. So
Thank
here
you
we
very
go.
much
There's a
indeed.
lot of it that you're not going to like, but hey ho. The Labour Party, founded in 1900 by working class people, trade unionists and socialists. Going forward in 1994 with pit closures etc, the government made a contract to be a guarantor of the miner workers pension fund, making the benefits secure, guaranteeing pension plus inflation increases each year in return for a 50-50 share of the pension surplus. Trustee took advantage of this security and made higher investments. As a result, the pension has been estimated to be worth 33% higher than it would have been without government intervention. Gordon Brown in 1997 famously raided the excess profits of privately owned utility companies because they had made more money than the government thought they should or would have. Isn't this similar to the 50-50% surplus split? And the money raised was for benefit of the whole UK, as it will be today. Well, during the general election campaign of 2019, John McDonnell gave a commitment that the incoming Labour government would take, not buy, but take 10% share in stock market companies and use the 10% share of profits for the nation. Sounds very similar. But such a policy would have reduced the value of mine workers' pension scheme who invested in it and ruined the pension plans of millions of private pension holders. Taking the surplus does neither, but it does provide for the nation. If the 50-50 split is abolished, does this mean the government guarantee is also defunct and therefore the level of risk of investment? Would a 33 devaluation of the fund result and in turn a lower pension, or is the government still expected to guarantee the premium without the guard for the rest of the taxpaying workforce? Miners' redundancies were quite large, while business on our high street closed and proprietors lost their livelihoods and some their homes. Miners have been paid out for white finger and other disabilities, while also being cared for by the NHS. This is the bit the parents were keen on. 1.9 billion even represents 3 to 4 days' money of the NHS. There are only 125,000 miners with up to 15,000 deferred, and there are 65 million UK residents. To deny the NHS 1.9 billion when it is being used to rehabilitate and rebuild ex-miners such as my dear old dad is wrong. To protect the NHS, mum and dad always vote Labour as they feel that the Tories will privatise it. The irony is that left to Labour, we would have joined the European vaccine programme, and that's gone down well. And to my knowledge, Jeremy Corbyn has voted against every motion to protect the public from COVID, so they could have been dead by now. Notwithstanding, they still maintain that the NHS is the most important consideration in their lives, and therefore, for them, I can't vote this motion as it would deny the NHS £1.9 billion. It's not the socialist thing to do. It's for the many, not the few. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, councillor Roberts. Councillor Janet Tate.
Yeah, Janet Tate, representing Shirebrook South Ward. I'd just like to pick on something that Councillor Roberts has just said about the abolition of the 50-50 split. That's not what's being asked for. We're asking for a reduction. So the mine workers should still receive some guarantee on the pension, but for the government to continue taking 50% when the claimants are getting smaller and smaller every year is just not fair. And to compare it to actions taken by other governments and other politicians, it's just not right. You know, two wrongs don't make a right, Councillor Roberts. And so I support this motion wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other members wishing to speak? In which case, yes, Councillor Fritchley.
Yeah, no further comments. Then I'd formally move it with the inclusion that we write to our MP asking for his particular stance on this. I'm sure he knows he represents a mining community, a former mining community, and I think he said our priorities are his priorities. So we expect support from Mark Fletcher. When you consider, colleagues, that mining has been important, really has been important. In fact, it was that important that during World War II, people were conscripted into the mining industry. That's how important it was. And if you've never been down a pit, you perhaps not know, Peter, exactly what conditions existed down there. But I should imagine that everybody in here will support it, perhaps apart from Peter. So I'd formally move that, Chair, the 18 recommendations and also the 19th one, where we seek some assurance from our MP.
Thank you very much indeed. As seconder, are you happy about the inclusion of seeking assurance from our MP? Thank you very much indeed. You've heard the motion. We're going to take a vote by show of hands. Would you assist in counting, please, on the front bench to my left?
Chair,
Right?
Chair,
Sorry. did
could
you
I have the
speak?
vote? No, is to have the vote recorded.
You wish to have the vote recorded, okay? That, I believe, has to be proposed and has to be agreed by at least, am I right, Sarah, 3 members? By 3 members. Does that receive support that it be recorded? Yes, it does. Thank you. So in that case, could you please, Sarah, conduct a recorded vote? And I imagine, Sarah, all she will require is for, against, or abstain. Okay, Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. That's entirely correct. I will read your name and then can you please tell me if you're for, against, or abstaining? Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Bowler. Councillor Bullock. Councillor Cannon. For. Councillor A. Clark. For. Councillor N. Clark.
For.
Councillor Clifton.
For.
Councillor Clough. For. Councillor D. Dixon. Right. Councillor, there you are. Councillor M. Dixon. Councillor Downs. Councillor Fox.
For.
Councillor Fritchley. Councillor Hales. Councillor Heffer. Councillor Hoy. Councillor Joesbury. Councillor Kane. Councillor McGregor. Councillor Munro.
For.
Councillor E. Parkin. For. Councillor G. Parkin.
For.
Councillor Peake. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Salt. Not here. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tate.
For.
Councillor Turner. Councillor Walker. Councillor Watson. And Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much indeed. So the result is 29 for, 1 against, and no abstentions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move on, if we may, to motion B, which was going to be presented by Councillor Clive Mosby, but he's had to give his apologies. And so I'm now going to invite the leader of the council, Steve Fritchley, to present the motion. Councillor Fritchley, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In the absence of Clive, because Clive were quite keen to move this, but unfortunately he's not well. And so I'd formally move the recommendations, Chairman. We all know what it's about. We all know that people are going to lose 20 quid a week of this universal credit reduction. And, it'll have a major impact, I think, on our economy. It'll take, I don't know how many millions out of the Derbyshire economy. So I'd move the 4 bullet pointed recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Andrew Joesbury has seconded that. Anybody wishing to speak on this motion? Yes, Councillor David Dixon, please.
Yeah, Councillor David Dixon, Bardwell Ward. And a note on the motion that was submitted that it says that unemployment is expected to continue to rise. I don't know where that came from. As far as I'm concerned, unemployment has continued to fall. When we look at there's over 1 million jobs as well that have vacancies. So I think that is rather misleading on that. I'm not sure where he came up with that.
Sorry, councillor Tate.
Janet Tate, Shirebrook South. It's just to note really that a lot of recipients that claim universal credit are actually in fact in work, but on low pay. So it's not necessarily just the unemployed that would benefit from leaving this £20 a week in place.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else wishing to speak? Yeah, councillor Liz Smith.
Hi, it's councillor Liz Smith, Old Tucknell Ward. I think that you can't really end this yet because we really don't know where we are with the pandemic. The pandemic is far from over. Furlough has yet to come to an end. We don't know what the impacts of that are going to be. So I'll be supporting this motion because I think it's important.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else wishing to make comment further? I'm going to bring you in, if I may, at the end, Councillor Dixon, because you have already spoken, but I will allow you to come back in. Councillor Clark, first of all, Councillor Nick Clark, and then Councillor Peake.
Councillor Nick Clark, Bowles Over Eastward. Thank you, Chair. I support this motion. Universal credit shouldn't be cut. We're coming up into the winter months. We know that fuel prices are going to be increasing. Wholesale prices have already gone up, and they're going to be transferred to the customers. So people are going to have to make a choice between putting food on the table or cutting their heating costs. I support the motion.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Sandra Peake.
Councillor Sandra Peake, Langworth Ward. Yeah, I support everything what Councillor Clark and Councillor Tate said. And it is not just the people who, about unemployment. It is people who are in very low wages, and it is a lifeline to them. And as we say, all fuel costs are going up. So it is important that we do keep this universal credit. Thank you.
Thank you. And just from the chair, I'd also note that it's not just fuel costs that are going up. Food costs are also going up. For those of you who, like myself, regularly visit supermarkets, not only are food costs going up, but there's a paucity of food choice. And so you're being forced to buy what's available. So that's yet another punishment on those least able to use what limited financial resources they have. And so the removal of this, in my opinion, speaking from my own point of view, is nothing far short of a criminal attempt at starving certain people to death. Completely unacceptable. Councillor David Dixon, I don't think anybody else has indicated they wish to speak. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, this was put in as a temporary measure. Again, I'd say that the opening gambit about Councillor Mosby makes a point of the unemployment, and the numbers are just wrong. If you look at the national numbers, in July 20, it's 5.2%. And if you look at the local numbers, we're down at 4.2%, and that's been falling. And it's just the misleading opening statement of that motion, I think, is just totally wrong.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, Councillor Rose Bowler.
Yeah, Councillor Rose Bowler, thank you, Chair. A few years ago, I was told about someone collecting a food parcel. One. I was quite shocked. Bowls over, 21st century food parcel. They can't keep pace now. Take this £20 off. How is it going to increase? It's scary what's happening.
Thank you, Councillor Bowler. Councillor Josbury.
Hey, right. I'd just like to point out, I've got no problem with the £20 stopping, keeping the £20 in place. But I'd like to point out that all the public sector have been on a pay freeze for the last 10 years and haven't had a pay rise. The government have just announced that they're going to take another 1.25% off them to pay for everything. Like, so there's a bit of unfairness here, like where the public sector, all the public workers and what have you, aren't getting pay rises. We've got a 20% £20 pay rise for the unemployed and for the low paid, which I've got no problem with whatsoever. Like, particularly how things are going up. But we've now got to the situation where the government are now taking money back off the public sector workers and everybody else. I just wanted that noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Josbury. Are there any other contributors, please, to this debate on this motion? In which case, on the assumption that you're happy, I wish to take a vote by show of hand. So are you happy with me conducting that kind of vote? Yes? Okay, so all those in favour of the motion, please indicate so that we can count. I've got 26 for. All those against? One against. Are there any abstentions? There are 2 abstentions. Thank you very much indeed. So that is carried. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on, if we may, please. The next item on the agenda, then, please, is item 8, environmental health update. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite the portfolio holder for environment, Councillor Deborah Watson, to present the report. Councillor Watson.
Morning, thank you, Chair. Councillor Deborah Watson, Tipshelf Ward, portfolio holder for environmental health and street scene. As members will recall, we came to council towards the end of last year and we requested a sizable increase in the budget for the environmental health service delivery. It gives me pleasure to bring this report today, which is to provide you with an update on how well this service is now operating following that investment, as well as detailing how well it has also responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I'm sure you've all had a chance to read through the report, but I would like to draw your attention to a few key points. Environmental health is clearly a service which through each year sees peaks and troughs in its workload, but over the last 2 years has been a steady increase in all casework. That's predominantly around requests for support from businesses as well as complaints for domestic nuisances. The pandemic has also brought a serious increase in business enquiries during the periods of lockdown and business restrictions. So if we just highlight a few examples, at the peak of the lockdown last summer, there was a 300% increase in domestic burning complaints. And that was when the household recycling centres were closed. Contrastingly, there was actually a reduction in complaints about noise nuisance from dog barking because more people were at home with their pets. However, at the same time, there was seemingly a lack of tolerance for general noise nuisance, and that area of complaints did increase. Now, you'll see from the report that a new app has been trialled. This brings an easier way for people to collate the evidence and send it in to us when they request help with noise nuisance. This has proved successful and will continue post-COVID. There's a new team manager in post in the environmental health protection team, which has meant that performance has improved in a number of different areas, such as planning application consultations and air quality monitoring, for example. The licensing section has also seen an increase in requests for advice, for example, from taxi drivers. And a number of operational improvements have been introduced, such as online applications and the licenses themselves being issued by email. New staff have been appointed to help streamline this work, and that enables the licensing and enforcement officers to continue with more enforcement activities. The taxi driver licensing policy is being reviewed, and a new policy to license sex establishments in the district is being drawn up ready for adoption. One area of work which of course frequently raises its head with members is fly tipping. The environmental enforcement team are dealing with increased numbers of fly tipping incidents, particularly since the second lockdown. Work is underway to review CCTV and surveillance technologies to help capture evidence and undertake enforcement around such waste crimes. Members will be pleased to have seen the recent press release which shows the successful prosecution of a roofer from out of the district who chose to tip his waste in the rural hamlet of Stainsby. Neighbourhood patrols were fully restored in spring this year to try to ensure that littering and dog fouling offences are both deterred and detected. I do feel this is actually an area in which members can help, because we can encourage our residents to forward information, evidence to the district, to the environmental health team, because we all know who walks their dogs at a certain time and where these offences are probably occurring. So another area which has seen an increase in work is the food hygiene and safety inspections. And this shows what an entrepreneurial district we are, because in particular, this has been new operators such as home bakers who are operating on different platforms such as Facebook Marketplace. A specific COVID team has been established using funding from DCC Public Health and surge funding from the Ministry of Health, Homes, Communities and Local Government. This service has dealt with enquiries, complaints and outbreak investigations, as well as undertaking proactive visits to regulated businesses. In fact, since January this year, this team has made over 300 visits, including on evenings and weekends. This ensures that businesses are compliant with legislation, as well as signposting them to further assistance. Additional ring fence funding has been received to ensure that in the year ahead, any COVID-related work, such as public health interventions, compliance checks and enforcement, can continue. Some of this money will also be used to provide fully funded courses to help business to ensure that they are compliant. This will hopefully also help to improve public confidence in the hospitality and catering businesses in our district. So members will further recall that when we asked for the increased funding, one of the main reasons was to enable recruitment to a number of staff vacancies in that service, along with the creation of some new posts to undertake this extra work. A number of recruitment campaigns have been conducted, a number of new posts have been established and successfully recruited to, but also given the national shortage of environmental health officers, some internal trainee opportunities have been created and recruited into. This means that, pleasingly, the service is now almost fully staffed. And we are now assured by the head of service that the benefits of the increased investments are indeed being felt, and that the increased capacity to undertake statutory duties means the service is being delivered in line with guidance and in accordance with national regulator expectations. So I hope this means that, Teresa, you will agree that this has been money well spent. And I would like to move the recommendation 3.1 on page 31 of the agenda, that council notes this report.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Watson, for your report. Are there any questions to the report? First of all, Councillor David Dixon.
Councillor David Dixon, Barbara Ward. It's not a question, it's just I'd like to make a comment regarding one activity on there, which was Wesley, which at one time we thought was falling off the edge of a cliff. It was so bad there for many different reasons. And I'd like to thank all the various teams that got involved in that. And we've made a massive difference down there. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'm sure lots of members sat round here have had a long history, like yourself now, with that whole area. So that's really good news. So thank you for sharing it with us. Councillor Peake.
Councillor Peake, Langworth Ward. Yeah, I'd like to thank Deborah for a detailed report. And I'd also like to thank our refuse workers. I know that it's been difficult through, everybody keeps getting pinged. And I think sometimes we've been a little bit late in emptying dustbins, but not like some other authorities where it's been flowing out over onto the pavements and the road. So I would like to thank all refuse workers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for those comments. I 100% echo your comments. Councillor Tricia Clough.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tricia Clough, Altutton Ward. I'd like also to thank Deborah for her report and also the environmental health team. Yesterday, the new Huff and Hub, which opened recently, got a 5-star award for their community cafe, which means we can now provide meals at a rate that the people in our community can afford to eat. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clough. Are there any other comments anybody wishes to make or questions they wish to ask of Councillor Watson? Yes, yes. Karen.
Thank you, Karen Hansen, Executive Director. I just wanted to make a comment really that the team have been really grateful for the additional investment. It's enabled them to do a full service review and to create the vacancies that Councillor Watson has just mentioned. They've really welcomed that approach. It's enabled them to really concentrate on the day job and be more proactive in the work instead of constantly fighting fire really with the volume of work that they've encountered, particularly through COVID and the infection control work. So I know, speaking on behalf of the team as well, that they're very grateful for the additional budget that you provided for them last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Karen. So you've heard the recommendation. The recommendation is as on page 20, that members note the update on the Work Environment Health Service during this pandemic. Can I ask if that receives a seconder, first of all? Yes, I can see about 5 seconders. If you want a name, we'll go with Councillor Derek Adams. It's the shortest to spell. But there were lots of people willing and happy to say. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. That appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, we'll move on, if we may, please, to the next item on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda is going to be presented by the Solicitor of the Council, and it's the independent person appointment. Now going to invite Monitoring Officer Sarah Sternberg to present the report. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. The term of office for one of the Council's 2 independent persons is due to come to an end. The relationship with the independent person has worked well, and so we would like to extend the appointment for a further 4 years, and that's the recommendation on page 32 for you. If you have any questions, be pleased to answer them.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah. Are there any questions? Yes, I believe Councillor McGregor wishes to speak, first of all.
Yeah, it's basically to support, as you'll see on the report, that's been approved by the portfolio holder, which I do approve. It's a straightforward report, and the recommendations, I would like to move the recommendations on page 32, and that is to appoint Kirk as an independent person to assist with the standards process until the end of September 2025.
Thank you very much indeed. And that's been seconded by the leader. Are there any members wishing to speak for or against? No, in which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. That appears to be unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your report, Sarah, and thank you, Duncan. Moving on then, we move on now to item 10, which is the Senior Management Review. And you have a report, and I'm going to invite Councillor Steve Fritchley to present the report. Councillor Fritchley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Straightforward report. It's endorsement of directors' actions in putting together this second tier structure. You've got little pictures somewhere in here. Whatever page it's on, I've lost it. 30. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. I think it's a good structure. I think it fills all gaps that have been created over the past sort of 12 months or so. And I'd move that we endorse this report, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does that receive a seconder?
Councillor McGregor.
That's been seconded. Thank you very much indeed by Councillor Shrewsbury. Does anybody wish to speak or ask any questions about the proposed structure? No. In that case, if you don't mind, I'll move immediately to a vote. All those in favour of endorsing the proposed structure, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, members. So now we move on, if we may please, to item 11. And I'm going to start, if I may, by inviting Leader of the Council, Steve Fritchley, to make a formal proposal with regard to suspending council procedure rules for this item. Councillor Fritchley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think it's important that we have this debate. I'd like every member to feel comfortable and free to speak whenever something occurs that they want to speak on during the presentations and discussions. And I would formally move, Chair, that we suspend standing orders relating to the rules of debate.
Thank you very
Councillor
much
McGregor is
indeed.
second.
And that's been seconded by councillor McGregor. And in terms of how I intend to interpret that from the chair, the first thing I will say is I'm not going to ask members necessarily to stand. It's entirely up to individual members if they wish to stand when they speak or wish to ask a question. There will be no restriction on the number of times any member may request to speak and be heard and say whatever it is they wish to say, ask whatever questions they wish to ask, either with the leader, the deputy leader, or anybody else, any of the officers who've spoken, seeking further clarification. The idea is to have an open, free, frank debate about this absolutely vital issue. That is the issue of local government reorganization. And I don't think I'm likely to be told that I'm incorrect, but I actually believe that we might be the first authority of this size to conduct a debate of this sort on this fundamental issue that faces every local authority of this tier and above across the whole of England. I can't say England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland anymore, can I? But certainly across England. I'll stick to Derbyshire then, but certainly. So without further ado then, to start the debate, can I first of all bring to your attention, members, that a member of the BBC has now joined us and will be recording the debate, but only for recording purposes, and will not be invited to speak or ask further questions, because if necessary, that can be done on a one-to-one interview with the leader or any other senior person who's happy to be interviewed. Okay, so with that,
just want to chair, if to allow the persons, I see you setting up, whether you'd want to just have an interval for 15 minutes to allow them to.
do you require some time to set up? You don't.
No.
Thank you very much
No.
indeed. No, we're fine. Thanks for reminding me. That's very kind of you. All right. So without further ado then, to introduce the whole topic and the debate, I'm going to invite Councillor Fritchley to speak first, and then I believe Councillor McGregor is going to speak after, and then many of the officers are going to speak to provide further information. If you need to make notes, please make notes as you go along. And if you think then of any questions, you've then got some notes to base questions or ask for further clarification on as we go along. If you are desperately short of paper, and I suspect you won't be, because if like me, you've got loads of paper on your table from meeting anyway, you should be able to make notes anyway, or even on your iPads if you've got them with you. But if you do need paper, just let us know, and I'm sure one of the officers will help you with some further paper if you require it. Is everybody all right for paper and pens and stuff if they want to make notes? Yes? Okay. Councillor Fritchley, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. You've all had a copy, colleagues, of the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government letter, where the Right Honourable Robert Jenrick sets out his what he wants everybody to do or not do. This is following the speech made by the Prime Minister on the 15th of July. I mean, this is not new. We discussed Vision Derbyshire last year, and we decided that we wouldn't be involved in that. It's still trundling on, but it's got a little bit worse today. The districts and, well, county especially, are looking at perhaps ways of exploiting the contents of this letter for combined authorities, for unitary authorities, looking at ambitious mayoral devolution and things like that. And it's not a party political thing, this, because I can remember in the late 80s, early 90s, when, in fact, when we were still at Bolsover, at Mansfield, discussing the regional government and sub-regional unitary authorities. It finally got kicked into touch with a few modifications where you got unitary Derby City, and we'll just talk about Derbyshire, and Leicester County remained a two-tier authority. So when I received this letter, I thought, you know, it really is a smart letter, this. It really is a good letter. So I started having a quick look and see how we've performed over the past 100 years or so. And so, you know, you start Googling and you had your own memories and what have you. So this is what I've come up with. I made a few notes. And it's only about 3/4 an hour long, so you'll be all right. The government has decided, yet again, to attempt another look at local government reform, evidenced by the latest Robert Jenrick communique. It is a clever letter. There is something in it for a lot of councils to latch onto. In essence, the letter lights the blue touch paper and then stands back to observe the firework display. It may appear to be a half-hearted attempt, but it needs to be considered by us all. And when I say half-hearted, because there seems to be this low-key, but it's not going to happen. I can tell you, they're doing a lot more behind the scenes than you can imagine. Bearing in mind that if this turns into a full-scale skirmish, which I think it will do, it will, of course, take your eye off what's happening in government. And we can see what's happening, you know, tax rises, insurance and so on. So, you know, I did a bit of a Google and got, so what is local government? The oldest and most basic form of local government is the parish or town council, which in some form goes back to the beginning of socialisation, with other forms of local government growing piecemeal over time. So much so that when the government decided to address the issue around the end of the 19th century, they discovered that there existed 62 counties, 302 municipal boroughs, 31 Improvement Act districts, 688 local government districts, 574 sanitary committees, 58 port sanitary committees, 2,302 school board districts, 1,052 burial board districts, 648 poor law unions, 13,775 ecclesiastical parishes, and nearly 15,000 civil parishes. So there's obviously a need for rationalisation, especially in a world that at that particular time had got better transport and communication. The total number of authorities that charged the ratepayer prior to 1894 was between 28,000 and 29,000, and all with different modus operandi. The Board of Local Government chose the civil parish as the basis of local government, and that exists to date. Well, up to yet, anyway. Over the years, especially the mid-40s and early 70s, and Duncan will remember this, national and local governments have evolved and devolved. Some authorities have amalgamated, some have become unitary authorities, having all their power, responsibility in one council. City, metropolitan councils, and so on, all have the same responsibility for delivering services. It depends mostly on density and area, and you can see that in the Robert Jenrick letter. A densely populated area like a large town or city, or even a closely related group of large towns, could become a unitary authority based on combined status. Most shires, however, rely on the two-tier system in order to effectively provide services, which makes sense in large, less dense shires in order to deliver effective services through district councils. And if you remember, you know, during the past 2 years with pandemic, it's mostly, well, it's been actually all district councils that have delivered this particular service required at that time. So the Shire district councils were formed from the above mentioned sanitary committees with specific powers for environmental health. And you've heard what Deborah's been saying earlier on. If the government is serious about reforming services and politics and bureaucracy, it needs to explain what it wants to achieve and why. Throughout history, there has always been antagonism between Parliament, government, and local government. And I said earlier, it's not party political. There's as many Labour politicians want to reform local government as there is any other, you know, especially Tory and Liberals. Mind you, it's a bit like King John and his barons, I suppose, wanting to sufficient control and acquiescence and a means to collect taxes. Invariably, just like the films involving the Sheriff of Nottingham, national government always wants to underfund local government primarily as a means of control. But government cannot govern and provide services without local government. They both need each other politically and administratively. Further too, there are other elements introduced to complicate matters even more. Economic areas, government office, regional enterprise zones, closing coalfield areas, position on the league or in the league table for deprivation, etc. As an aside, the government cannot directly take on local government because of the numbers involved. As strange as it may seem, collectively, local politicians have far more influence than ministers. Also, MPs, especially backbenchers, are influenced by their constituencies, which contain many powerful local government and influential councillors. So divide and conquer is the order of the day, which is obvious, really. Now that we know what it's all about, we need to determine what it's all about. If we now turn to the Robert Jenrick letter and try and decipher its content, everything I have said above becomes self-evident. Secretary of State Jenrick states quite clearly that the government, as part of its pre-election manifesto, will reform government, i.e. devolve power. The letter goes on to explain that the government does not want to or cannot do it alone, but wants to work with local government. So it is in effect leaving it to local politicians to come to some arrangement. Local politicians will naturally look to try and get the best for their constituents and will end up fighting each other to achieve that. And, you know, why is government not being involved? Because they haven't got time, and I'm sure our solicitor will explain parliamentary procedure and she'll explain why that letter is extremely clever. So government intervention creates imbalance. Good examples of this interference over the years are the separation of police, fire and education from local authority influence. You know, we've all seen how county council responsibilities have increased on one hand, reduced on other, and so on. Police and fire are now separate precepting authorities, as are the directly funded and controlled academies. This has served to reduce the responsibility of county councils and also their funding. Add to this the control of council tax precepts and charging caps. Look at the problems the county council have with their remaining responsibilities: adult care, social services, etc. I mean, we've got Natalie here today, who's adopted the mantle of being in charge of adult care, so she knows exactly what I'm talking about. So back to the letter, it says that not one size fits all, and no authority will be forced to wear a model that is ill-fitting. Its desire to devolve power and level up is admirable, and the cash available will excite some council leaders and put MPs in an influential position. The local enterprise partnerships, however, will probably disappear in the process. Yet another incentive to encourage councils to squabble. It is patently obvious that the main objective is to underfund authorities, whilst at the same time demanding more and more from them. I will remember, and Teresa will probably confirm this, I will remember the annual argument about the rate support grant settlement, which changed with the introduction of the poll tax and then the council tax. The creation of a beauty contest to enable authorities to bid for additional cash that was effectively top slice cash from the ever-reducing revenue support grant. The argument being that deprived areas needed more support, but history shows that the formula funding has not worked too well. As I've said, numbers play a large part in the relationship between national and local government. Reducing the number of councillors weakens their effectiveness to oppose apparent government unfairness and pushes them further into becoming mere agents of central government with little or no representation. And this is one of the key things, representation. And Duncan will be talking about that in a bit. And if you know history, we lost the American colonies through taxation without representation. But as I say, more about that later. The difficulties surrounding a local authority's ability to enhance their areas or even to maintain their statutory responsibilities also makes it less attractive for future councillors to become involved. An ever-increasing number of councillors now sit on all three tiers of local government, and in some cases Parliament, and also crime commissioners. It may be that they have a better insight into the best form of local government, even including absolute power. Or it may place them at a disadvantage in convincing colleagues of a lack of bias, which wouldn't really matter if they had absolute power. You can all remember the discussion about Derbyshire County Council's ambitions to change the shape of Derbyshire, both politically and administratively. That, colleagues, is an example of squabbling for survival due to government underfunding and reduced responsibilities. Derbyshire County Council has now written to Robert Jenrick, asking to be considered for inclusion in early discussions about county deals. The letter from Robert Jenrick goes on in an almost contradictory style, and I have asked our senior management team to analyse and reproduce possible scenarios within geographical, administrative and political parameters, with the implications for everyone in both government's political representation and tax take. Various studies have shown what the experienced local politicians are well aware of, is that people always concentrate on what works rather than sharing what doesn't work or is problematic. Sharing these experiences would benefit everyone. After all, there is no point in reinventing the wheel. There are, however, good reasons to analyse why things haven't worked, as there is copying what does work. Working together and sharing successes and failures is what makes local government work, and I think we are a perfect example of how we've done that over the past couple of years. Project collaboration reinforces this. Local government reflects the characteristics through elections of its electorate and the desires and expectations of its inhabitants. And that makes each local authority slightly different to its neighbour. Anything other than what we've got, including the imperfections, would make us all agents, as I've said, of central government with no face, no accountability, and no ability to shape the future. And shaping the future is what we are here to do. Whilst the here and now is important, the future is more so. We have all enjoyed and still do the benefits that have accrued from decisions made many years ago. We all live in decent accommodation. We enjoy the benefits of technology and transport, and a life that is to some degree liberal, and have the luxury of freedom of speech in a democratic society. We want that to continue long after we've gone. Vision Bolsover is our attempt to shape the future, but that depends on the decisions we make today, either locally or nationally. We are elected to provide what we think is best for all our residents, not just today, but for the future. That is why we plan purpose-built accommodation, why we try to maintain high street shops, why we try and attract local jobs, and why we are upgrading our sheltered accommodation and strive to maintain good services, all in an effort to explore and secure investment in the future. We also believe that services are best provided in-house by local employees and local elected councillors. It can prove problematic at times, but invariably it works out for best. Other authorities are outsourced core services and are now trying to bring them back in-house, and finding it extremely difficult. You may consider that what we want to achieve will only be possible by being part of a bigger authority, and you may well be right, I don't know. But there will be a price to pay, and I've asked our senior management team to consider the pros and cons. Finance, the root of all evil, will be on the lips of some people. Big scheme equals more money equals bigger authority. You may think that it makes sense foregoing local democracy in order to achieve that. I don't think so. You may even believe that there is no alternative. We are being forced into it, could well be the popular refrain. Nearly 30 years ago, I remember asking the council's treasurer how long it will be before the financial squeeze is applied. This was following the defeat of the government's attempt to bring in regional government and sub-regional unitary council. Well, it's here again. It's easy to stand still and do nothing except complain. It is easy to condemn what is here and not propose an alternative. We at Bolsover, we don't do that. We at Bolsover want to help shape the future. However, we will not help shape that future if we constantly wait for someone else to make And I know BBC's here has had a particular interest. Politics Today show had a particular interest in what Bolsover was doing. And, you know, as a parting shot then, well, for the time being, times may be difficult in some urban areas, but I don't think that rationalising staff numbers will overcome these difficulties. Likewise, trying to pursue taxation without proper representation is a recipe for disaster. And lastly, a faceless bureaucracy will not provide an efficient service to the taxpayer. And that's what it's all about, is people that we represent. We also need to consult people. And so if I refer to Robert Jenrick's letter and some antics that have been going on for the past couple of years, it's all sort of cloak and dagger, really. There's nothing concrete. It's all a bit ephemeral. So what I've done, I thought, well, we'll start today. As the chairman said, we are probably first authority in Derbyshire to openly discuss the Robert Jenrick letter and other things that have been sort of tabled. I mean, things like Derby City trying to seduce the districts around that area to form a unitary authority of Derbyshire South. That would leave Derbyshire North and so on. So, as I say, not everybody is supportive of this sort of activity, and it's irrelevant what party people have subscribed to. So what I've done, I've reserved 4 pages in the Touch magazine to communicate this debate to our readers. There will also be an opportunity in both the magazine and our website for readers to pass comment, because if you actually look at that letter, it says there's no need to look at employing consultants and everybody else. You know, where it says it in here somewhere. At this stage, this is not a call to commission consultants or draw up extensive proposals, either for new deals or further powers. We would strongly discourage the use of costly external advisors, and council should not be hiring lobbyists. So you look at, we've got one here, look. This is Future of Local Government, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And this has been commissioned by the County Council Network. So that fell on deaf ears, I think. So there you go, colleagues. I will shut up. Duncan wants to come in next with his experiences. And then we'll have contributions from Karen, Grant, Teresa, and I'm sure Sarah will enlighten us all on the parliamentary process that resulted in the cleverness of this letter. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much indeed. Duncan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Chair, I would like, with your approval, to give, after this debate is concluded, a notice of motion. Colleagues, I want to thank Councillor Fritchley for his words, his rallying call for us to be proactive and take the initiative in shaping the future of Bolsover and its constituents. Big advert. I'd like, if I may, to emphasise just a few of the key points that Steve raises. As you may know, I have had 50 years of experience as a local councillor across parish, district and county jurisdictions. This has given me a level of understanding that enables me to speak with authority, I believe, on the concept of local government reform and its implications. I too remember previous calls for amalgamation of councils. I remember the demand for greater efficiencies and being told that bigger was better. I can tell you with absolute certainty that I have never experienced this to be the case. And this experience is backed up by evidence across the country where the anticipated benefits have failed to materialise. I wonder why there's called a levelling up. The case for bigger is better is a flawed one and premised on a misunderstanding of the concept of democracy and a misguided ambition for cost effectiveness. Maintaining our democratic accountability our direct connectiveness to our communities, our ability to represent the people we live with and amongst is critical to a healthy and sustainable social, economic, and political future. Demands for unitary authorities sacrifice local democratic processes at the altar of party political dogma. We already have one of the lowest ratios of councillors to electorate of major Western nations. The average size of a new county unitary council would be 122 times larger than the average council in Germany, 14 times larger than in Denmark, 5 times larger than the current average for all councils in England. County councils currently represent populations ranging between 843,000 and up to 1.6 million, almost equal to Northern Ireland and covering vast diverse landscapes and communities. If county councils imposing unitary authorities achieved what they are asking for, they would have an average population almost 5 times larger than the current average size of all English councils. With a national average of 3,300 voters per councillors, England is already substantially less locally represented than other major Western countries. District councils and local town and parish councils continue to offer the most direct representation between their electorate and the representatives, with an average of 2,000 voters per councillor. County councils, by contrast, have 9,000 voters per councillor on average. This issue, colleagues, here is not a failure of local government. The issue is a failure of support for local government. A failure over years to provide sufficient funding and autonomy to enable local government to flourish and energize the economic recovery of local communities. The argument about creating larger authorities is a distraction from this core issue. It enables central government to create a diversion of debate by local councillors, engenders competitive behaviours between us, when we should be uniting in condemnation of what has been done to local democratic processes. Local district and parish councils are the bedrock of how we will, as local communities, build a new, more prosperous future for our communities. It is us, not some autonomous, centrally determined, disconnected, monolithic entity working from a regional central office that understands best our local community, its needs, its opportunities, and can build on its strengths. We have clearly demonstrated this as we worked in collaboration across our partners and to support our communities through the COVID pandemic. It was us that joined the dots, developed collaboration where it was needed across employers, community, and the third sector, and health and care organizations, to enable our community to find the resilience to weather the most severe impact on lives and livelihoods. We could have done more had we been better supported from central government to do so, and not been stymied by years of underinvestment. In conclusion, the development of unitary authorities is not new. 3 times in my lifetime as a politician, I've been involved one way or another in this. And a certain person at Matlock was involved in 2 of them and pushing Vision Derbyshire. It is an old debate that has been resurrected to hide the fundamental problem of a corrosion of local democratic control. The argument that we can create sudden efficiencies of process, of human resources, of economic regeneration through these larger monolithic and insensitive bureaucracies is not based on evidence, but political convenience and lazy rhetoric. I urge you to listen closely to your conscience as we debate the future of Bolsover District Council and the call for a unitary council for Derbyshire. I implore you to consider whether you really believe in your heart of hearts that the people of Bolsover District will be better served, will be given a brighter future under a different county arrangement. Or do you think that we, you and I, who understand our local communities so intimately, can achieve more by continuing to work in the spirit of collaboration and partnership to get on with the job we've been elected to do, especially as we face the consequences of the COVID pandemic? I emphatically suggest we can. We should not therefore allow ourselves to be distracted by yet another vacacious debate on reorganisation. We have our Vision Bolsover plan, advert. Let's get on with it, colleagues, and deliver. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Duncan. I'm now going to invite, and please forgive me if I get the order slightly awry. I'm going to start by inviting Grant Galloway, who's going to speak next and talk about some of the technical implications. Grant, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Grant Galloway, Executive Director. I want to talk a little bit today about the potential structures that that could be put in place across Derbyshire with agreement. I'm going to repeat some of the things that the leaders already said and the deputy leaders already said, but I make no apologies for that because I think it's important that we do emphasise some of the major things that are happening. I'll also talk a little bit about the current landscape across Derbyshire, what other people are thinking. I'm not going to talk in general in people's names, but just in general. And hopefully some of the things that I've said today will enable you to draw upon your own experiences and your own knowledge to help inform the debate. So as you've already heard from the leader, the government are currently consulting on a potential reform of the way services are delivered across the country. So what could this mean? So this could result in no change at all, where services are delivered at a local level, but it could be about creating a single county or even a regional council located in one of the major cities. So depending on the size, it could be Derby, it could be Nottingham, or it could even go as far afield as Leicester. So the county of Derbyshire, and including Derby City, is a very diverse area, which sees districts, villages, towns and cities which have very different needs. So they have different economic prosperity, they have different challenges. So you've got from the rural Peak District in the west, you've got the heavily populated cities in the south, and then you've got the towns and villages of the former mining communities in the north and the east. The type of local authority structure adopted will have an impact on the access and accountability the electorate will have. So generally, the more accessible politicians are, the easier it is to hold them to account, have dialogue with them, and be more likely, that is, they will understand the needs of the constituents. There's plenty of evidence out there to suggest that. And again, you may agree with that statement, you may not, but drawing on your own knowledge, I'm sure you'll enter the debate and give everyone your view. There's plenty of evidence out there to suggest this. The larger the authority, the more remote and less connected people are, and that the needs of the rural communities differ from the needs of a city region, for instance, or a larger metropolitan area. This is generally because of the size and concentration of the people and the wider range of services that they provide. It would therefore make sense to ensure that whatever local government model is put in place, it has the right balance between being small enough to be accountable and accessible, and large enough to benefit from economy of scale, and that the type and makeup of population across the area is similar. So in other words, it be urban focused or it be rural focused. So to give you a flavour of some of the potential governance models, I'm going to briefly explain three structures. The first one will be very familiar to you because it's what we do now. So it's the two-tier model where you have a district, there's the lower tier and the county council as the upper tier. And in that, services such as housing, refuse collection, grounds maintenance and economic development are delivered at district council level, and things like highways, adult social care and education at a county council level. So the county council is generally responsible for functions which have county-wide impact, and the districts deal with services which have an impact at a local level. The advantages of the two-tier model are that services are delivered at a local level and are better understood and who better understand the needs of the area. It has the advantage of being accountable and accessible, ensuring people have more of a voice, while county-wide functions such as transport are dealt with under one organisation, giving them the ability to take a holistic view of cross-country impacts, which I think is important. Disadvantages: the public may not always understand which organisation is responsible for which service, and economies of scale may not be realised. The second one I want to talk about is the one-tier model or the unitary authority. So this is where all services are delivered by one authority. So this is likely to be county-wide organisation, which should or probably would include Derby City. All functions currently undertaken by the districts, county council and Derby City would be delivered from one administrative centre with potentially local hubs. So the advantage of the unitary is uniform services delivered across the former district areas. There's a wider tax base, only one set of decision makers. So amalgamation of service is likely to reduce costs and increase resilience. The disadvantages: there would be a reduction in accountability and the organisation is less accessible. There would be a reduction in the number of elected members. So I did a quick search across the whole of England. These are not official figures, just what I've done a quick reckon up on. So the average number of members in a unitary authority in England is 61. The average number of members in a district council across the whole of England is 43, and the average number of members in a county council is 61, which nearly mirrors the county of Derbyshire. So this means that there's likely to be a reduction in members equal to the number of members representing all the districts across Derbyshire. Regional council, this is the final one that I'm going to talk about. This is likely to be more than one unitary authority with as a recognisable single identity. For example, this could mirror D2N2 LEP area, where you have, or what you would have, is 4 unitary authorities: Derby and Derbyshire, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, or more likely Derby and Derbyshire become one unitary, and Nottingham and Nottinghamshire another. They would more than likely be governed as one overall central organisation, or even if it got even wider than that into Leicestershire, it could even be a combined mayoral region. So the advantages are very similar to the unitary authority model, but probably in a larger scale. These are just a few examples of models which could be introduced, with many variations between the two. So I think it'd be difficult to try and highlight them all out, but I think this size and the scale of the ones we're talking about could be representative to a number of different scenarios. So it's worth noting there are a number of things still at play across Derbyshire. I know the leader and deputy leader have spoken about some of them. What we believe Derby City have already put in a proposal forward to government about forming a South Derbyshire Unitary Authority. And we know that they recently met with Derbyshire local authorities to discuss that proposal. So they've been very open about it. As the leader outlined earlier, the evidence is out there to suggest a full-scale skirmish is already brewing in Derbyshire, with the county council preferred option of Vision Derbyshire, which has been discussed at council previously. It is unclear exactly how the county council see the end governance structure of this being set up, but at the very least, it will have a governance structure made up of participating council members with officers working directly for them. But it may end up being a unitary authority forced upon it, given the actions of Derby City. Or it could just be that they want to implement the Case for Change document, which I think was presented at council a few months ago, and that relies on bringing some efficiencies forward through scale, but that relies on redundancies. So they were planning to spend £48 million on what they called exit costs, redundancies, in other words. And that would equate to, according to their figures, around about 1,500 people across Derbyshire. So I just wanted to go back really to where we started this. So go back to the beginning and to make, I think it would make sense to ensure that whatever local government model is put in place has the right balance between being small enough to be accountable and accessible and large enough to benefit from the economies of scale. And the type and makeup of the population that it serves is similar. So it's either an urban or it's a rural focus. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Grant. If you don't mind, we've got about 4 or 5 officers who are going to speak and give you more information, and then I will bring people in to ask questions or to make points. Okay, because that's how we've sort of set it up, if that's okay with you. All right, so if you make a note of whatever point you want to make, etc., then you'll have your chance to speak. So the next person I'm going to invite is the next Executive Director, Karen Hanson, who is going to give further information and clarification. Karen, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We thought at this point it might be useful just to clarify exactly what we know so far. There isn't a lot of detail coming through other than the letter that the leader referred to earlier, dated the 15th of July from the Right Honourable Robert Jenrick. However, following that letter on the 27th of July, a question and answer session did take place with senior council officers and leaders. So they did provide a little bit more information to put alongside the letter. And I'm just going to outline this morning for you just some of those bullet points and statements that have been clarified, just for your information, really. So the ministry was clear on that day that it will not impose any top-down government solutions, and reorganisation is not a requirement for a county deal. There is an acceptance that deals can be done within 2-tier areas as well as unitaries and areas with a combination of the two. There is not a single specified structure or governance model for county deals. The need for consensus will depend on the model and the detail being presented. County deals will build on the government's work at a local level, in towns, high streets and on local infrastructure. They'll be based around the local identity and operate on a geography that doesn't isolate neighbouring areas and prevent them from accessing devolution opportunities. The nature of a governance structure will also depend on the nature of the deal and the types of powers and flexibilities provided within that deal. There is an expectation that different county deals will have different governance models, powers and funding to maintain a flexible approach and recognise local need. They definitely emphasise that it will not be a one-size-fits-all approach. There is an expectation of improvement in governance, efficiencies and joined-up services, and strong leadership is fundamental, along with effective local scrutiny to help residents know who is accountable for decision-making in their area. The government would like feedback on the types of powers and flexibilities that councils would like to see that would unlock delivery of outcomes rather than further requests for funding, and places with the clearest, most innovative and readily deliverable proposals that support levelling up will be prioritised. It's expected that most county deal discussions will take place following the publication of the Levelling Up white paper in the autumn. Several questions were asked at the webinar around a date for that white paper. They made it very clear that it would be the autumn, but they wouldn't give any further definite date around that. And as senior officers, we are aware that sometimes those dates push on and it may well be the back end of the autumn. We'll just wait and see when that white paper comes out. Unfortunately, I think they've got a lot of proposals to go through. They're currently having those discussions and the ministry are already talking to some areas around their proposals. Areas that wish to take part in early discussions were requested to get in touch with ministers prior to the 13th of August. And as Grant has outlined, we are aware that Derbyshire County Council has done that. They have submitted an interest as a priority area, and I understand that meetings are starting to take place around what that could or might look like. The government is open to considering early proposals from a few councils if they already have well advanced plans, but they need to have significant support in place. The white paper is expected to set out links to wider government strategies, including the spending review, and the vision to build back better following the pandemic. Locally led changes, including district council mergers, may be considered, but only if they improve local government in the area, if they've got local support and are supported by all councils concerned, that they have a credible geography of 2 or more existing local government areas that are adjacent and would not pose an obstacle to locally led joint working. A credible geography could potentially be in the region of 300,000 to 600,000 population, or potentially have regard for local circumstances, identity and economies of scale. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm now going to invite Teresa Fletcher, our 151 officer, to talk about the financial implications. Teresa, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to talk to you about finance. You'll all be aware that every autumn we update revised budgets for the current year based on the latest information within our authority, and we'll bring this to you for approval in December. We also update the medium-term financial plan for future years, and for this we need the financial settlement from the government. This is called the spending review, and this tells us how much government funding we'll receive, what level we can set the council tax at, and the multipliers to allow us to charge business rates, amongst other things. Quite often, this is the last bit of information we are waiting for to finish the MTFP and to see if it will balance. But it is also the most important information because there's nothing we can do to change it. In simple terms, the Treasury know how much they have to spend. They work out what they need to pay out to government departments such as health and social care, education, defence, home office and transport. And quite often, local government has to make do with what's left as an unprotected service. A bit of history on the spending reviews. The spending review for 2004 covered the years 2005-6 to 2007-8. The increases in spending to other departments meant a freeze was put on administration spending in the Department for Works and Pensions and Inland Revenue. In addition, local authorities were set the target of making annual efficiency savings of 2.5% each year from 2005 to 2008. Government funding given to local authorities was cut as it was assumed these savings would be made. This followed a report by Sir Peter Gershon, who identified a number of means by which efficiency gains could be made, including increasing sharing of purchasing arrangements, streamlined back office operations, and reduced transaction costs. The savings could be cashable or non-cashable, but had to be done without cutting services, and the saving was 2.5% of the 2004-05 net expenditure each year, which for us was about 250,000 each year. The financial crisis that occurred in 2007 and 2008 meant the government introduced a policy of austerity in the 2007 spending review, which covered the years 2008-9 to 2010-11. This was a programme of sustained reductions in public spending and tax rises, intended to reduce the government budget deficit. The austerity programme included reductions in welfare spending, the cancellation of school building programmes, reductions in local government funding, and an increase in the rate of VAT. Spending on the police, courts and prisons was also reduced. Austerity continued through the 2010 spending review, which covered the years 11-12 to 14-15, and also the 2015 spending review, which was for another 4 years, 2016-17 to 2019-20. This council saw a total reduction in government funding between 2009-10 to 2019-20 of £5.5 million, or 35.9% of total income. After managing to meet our Gershon efficiency targets, still being able to provide services with less resources meant we had to come up with new ways to close the funding gap caused by the year-on-year reductions in government grant. In 2011, the Strategic Alliance was formed with North East Derbyshire. The aim of the alliance was to work closer together, sharing expertise, experience and resources. There was a savings target set of 1.5 million over a 3-year period, which was 2011-12 to 2014-15. Initially, savings were made by having a joint management team, and by 14-15, which was the first complete year, we were saving £482,000 per year. Further savings eventually followed from reviews of services such as environmental health, street scene and the garage, plus ad hoc joint working and secondments in HR, planning, legal, performance, payroll and estates. From the start of the Alliance in 11-12 to 2018-19, the council made savings of £4.8 million. Over time, it has become apparent that although savings can be made by sharing management and other service costs, Even slight differences in the ambition of the councils can mean the workload of joint staff can become unmanageable. This has resulted in a loss of capacity at both councils as they both try to make progress in similar services at the same time. Looking toward this autumn now and the 2021 spending review, the Public Accounts Committee has published a report that looks at the effect of COVID-19 on local government finance, as well as at the prospects for reform of local government funding. The report reminds us that funding reforms for new homes bonus, fair funding and business rates retention have been planned since 2015-16 and were initially supposed to be implemented in 2019-20. It is highly likely that the fundamental reforms will again be delayed until at least 22-23, possibly even 23-24 now. However, there will still need to be a spending review for 22-23, as a spending review 20, which was for 21-22, was a further one-year extension to the spending review 19, which was a rollover of the 16-17 to 19-20 four-year settlement. Another one-year rollover in settlement is the likely outcome for 22-23. Yesterday, the government announced an increase in national insurance contributions for employees and employers of 1.25% to fund additional expenditure on social care. My understanding is that although this is welcome, it does not close the funding gap. Social care is still a key decision for government in this spending review, along with what to do about local government grants if the reforms mentioned earlier are again delayed. As I've been saying for a few years, with high business rates growth, any business rates reset is going to be bad news for us, as it is many other districts. The longer we keep the current system of business rates, the better it is for us. If I now refer back to the governance models mentioned by Grant earlier, the two-tier model, which is district and county, and the model we currently have, counties in particular are facing huge deficits in social care, which is all over the press, as I've said. A number of Section 114 notices have already been served, with more to follow, some are predicting. Many districts are predicting to be in difficulty when reforms are implemented due to shifting business rates growth elsewhere and the equalisation of council tax doing the same, based on the latest known information. The estimate of our deficit for 24-25 is 3.2 million. Also, a recent National Audit Office report suggests that only 45% of top tier and 35% of districts see their revenue returning to pre-COVID levels by 23-24, but all government support has ended. For a one-tier model, which is a unitary authority, where county and district services are carried out in one, potential savings for some joining up of back office functions due to economies of scale in finance, payroll, ICT, legal, etc., but likely to be large redundancy costs, such as mentioned in the PricewaterhouseCoopers document Case for Change, which proposed, as Grant said, making approximately 1,500 jobs redundant. Savings in members' allowances likely, as only one set of members is present in this model. Regional councils model, again similar to the one-tier model, but likely to be much larger, with the same implications, although in my opinion, the number of redundancies is likely to be drastically higher. Whichever model is used, it is felt by the APSI Local Government Commission that the current system of local government funding is not sustainable. Recommendations made by the Commission include a settlement that would ensure every council has sufficient resources to exercise its roles and responsibilities and meet the needs of its communities. This is what we all want. If this type of settlement were to be provided, I wonder if we'd be discussing local government reform at all. That's me, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. And finally, from the officers, I'm going to invite Sarah Sternberg, our monitoring officer, just to talk about parliamentary aspects. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick word on this. The government's parliamentary timetable for legislation is full, as outlined in the Queen's speech. It doesn't include local government reorganisation. There are also some other high-profile matters, such as things to do with the Housing White Paper, which are missing from that timetable, just demonstrating the pressure on parliamentary time. Without something in this timetable, the government is reliant upon existing legislation. Existing legislation requires agreement from all local authorities involved to any reorganisation or devolution proposal before there can be changed. So local government reform cannot be imposed. Looking for this agreement is what Robert Jenrick's letter is about, as well as trying to promote proposals for agreed change. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm now going to open the debate up to anybody who wishes to speak or contribute. Councillor McGregor, you said something about notice of motion. Do you want to do that now Or do you want to do that later when you've had people? Okay, all right. In that case, I'm now going to invite Councillor Peter Roberts asked to speak first. And if you indicate, I've got lots of people up here who will tell me. So Councillor David Dixon, then Councillor Andrew Josry, and then Councillor Stan Fox. So I'll make a note of that. Councillor Roberts, please, over to you.
It was just a grant. I missed the number of who's in what in the figures of Unitary and this and the other. It seemed to me that there was nobody left. It was Unitary was 60 and everybody else had vanished. Is that the case?
Yeah, so if you look at the existing unitary authorities across the country, the average number of members is 61. If you look at the existing county councils, bizarrely, the average number of members is 61. If you have a two-tier in a county council, you have in Derbyshire, it's 341, I think, extra members you've got serving the county, serving the district councils. So under a unitary authority, those 300 and odd members would disappear. So you'd be left with a 61. So you'd be looking at roughly the coverage per person for the county model.
Okay, thank you. Right, so the first person then after that is David Dixon, please. David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was really what I presume the leaders had discussions with other councils within the county, and what kind of response have you had from those? Is there any particular flavour that rises to the surface?
The discussions that took place, and they've been going on for probably a couple of years. They started regarding Vision Derbyshire, non-structural reform and all this sort of thing. I reported last time how things have changed over time. And it's got to a point where as part of Vision Derbyshire, it was decided by their officers that each district would need to contribute at least 50,000 quid and plus officer time to set up another or a superstructure to look at implementing Vision Derbyshire. This has only been to one authority from what I can gather, and that was before the paper from letter from Robert Jenrick emerged. So I think at the last count, it might be split 50-50. Grant attended a meeting of principal officers, I think it was yesterday, Grant. So Grant will have an update on the current thinking where, and I say this is not party, there's no party political involvement in this. You've got some Labour authorities that think it's wonderful, and you've got some, well, not Labour authority, Labour leaders that think it's wonderful, and you've got some Tory leaders that think it's a load of nonsense. You've also got some Tory leaders that think it's a good idea, but the Tory-controlled authorities don't think it is. But as I say, this is the first debate that's taking place since the production of this letter. But Grant will give you perhaps a few more details.
Grant?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't wish to mention names, so I'm going to talk in general terms. The leader's correct. There's only one authority that, well, two authorities actually. I think Derbyshire County Council has been through their process and they've agreed it. This is the governance structure and investing around about £50,000 in introducing some officers into the Vision Derbyshire model to deliver some of the outcomes that they perceive will be there. One other council, district council, has taken that through their approval process, so they're in principle signed up to Vision Derbyshire. Two other authorities are going to be taking it through in the next 2 months. So I think one's next month and one's the month after. Two authorities have indicated that they have no interest in taking it further through their approval process. One of them would like to take it through, but doesn't feel that they're going to get the support of members, so they've decided not to present it to members at this particular point in time. And there are a couple there that are sort of sitting on the fence and not giving an indication one way or another. So there's a very mixed bag across the whole of Derbyshire. And if you add that into the mix that Derby City and Derbyshire County Council have two completely different ambitions for a governance model across Derbyshire, there doesn't seem to be much agreement between the city and the county, between the county and the districts, and the districts to the districts. So a bit of a mess, I would say.
Thank you, Grant. If you want to come back, you're welcome to. Do you want to come back now or later? It doesn't matter. But if you want to come back later, that's fine.
No, I'm fine. And just to say that the question wasn't politically
No,
motivated.
that's fine. Yeah. Okay. So the next person who indicated they wish to speak is Andrew Josbury. Andrew, please.
Right, thank you. Right, I'm glad about this debate. I hope we're going to lead the way for the rest of the districts in Derbyshire. Now, I would say that there was a reason for the size of Bolsover when it was formed, Bolsover district when it was formed, so as it would be manageable, so that we could deliver the services needed. As Grant said, small enough and big enough, like to cope. We're voted in as councillors because we are local, right, and we represent the people who are local to us. We're at the heart of our communities and we know what is needed in our area. The people we represent need a local hub to contact about issues. They don't need to be disconnected. They don't need ringing a 0800 number or something like that and not getting a response. Just as an aside, I have had dealings just recently with highways at County, and it's took since April, since I first contacted, till now, till actually last week, to get any response. So some say we don't want the people who we are representing to be disconnected. Like they need the local feel. Right. Right. We need to leave well alone, and I think we need to leave all the good work that's been done by this council and previous councils, and the financial situation that we've got ourselves into, that we can move forward. We need to leave it alone. I don't want somebody from Swadlincote or Ashbourne or Buxton deciding what's happening in my village. I want the decision to be made by the local people, this council, so that we're all reading from the same script. We all know what we needed. We all know what's fair. What do people in Belper, or not particularly Belper, but Buxton say, know about what we want in our village? They don't, but they are going to be debating it and discussing it and deciding it. Right? So we need a local district council. And I hope that when all this is done, we are pretty much left alone. A few changes are good, sometimes they're bad. But a few changes for the good won't hurt anything. But basically, I would love this council to stay as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Next person is Councillor Stan Fox. Stan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I would just like to say a few words on behalf of Councillor Mary Dooley, Cabinet Member for Enforcement and Partnerships. She personally asked me in recent days if I would like to read it out due to sending apologies in, and I said I would. And it is as follows. I've been around a long time to know the misery of some of our residents have experienced throughout all my years as a local voice for local people. I'm well aware of the monies that has gone to other areas from Sheffield City region, from D2N2. We as an authority have the crumbs off the table to keep us sweet. The levelling up funding, £4 billion for economic social equalities. It was stated that local authorities are in the driving seat with this fund. We have seen nothing yet and probably won't. Today, you have a big decision to make, so say no to this review in all its forms. It is the watering down of local authorities. The Vision Derbyshire approach and the subsequent job losses at Derbyshire County Council, in brackets, cleaning contracts delivered by Suffolk with staffs not being paid, the loss of youth centres provision and healthcare. In my humble opinion, and I've seen it at Sheffield Region with other leaders of councils, leaders from Barnsley, Bassetlaw and Rotherham, they all want power. We want the best for Bolsover, for our 76,000 or thereabout residents that we represent in this view. If this review happens, who will serve them? I want our MP for Bolsover, Mark Fletcher, to stand side by side with our leader, Councillor Steve Fitchley, to oppose this. I feel that district councils are the backbone of our communities, and we are there ensuring we deliver value for money services and actually caring for our people. Unitary authorities are too big to care what happens at grassroots level and are too far removed. As a district councillor myself, I fully support Councillor Dooley's words. And thank you, Chair, that's it.
Thank you very much indeed, Stan, much appreciated. We move on now to Councillor Deborah Watson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as an independent councillor, I simply look at this in, the best method of representation for the people of my ward. I have no party political agenda whatsoever. But I also fail to see how we can achieve good representation for the people in a rural area through creating a unitary authority that's remote and with elected members who don't truly understand the needs of each local area. If this is about creating further financial savings, then it's simple. This district council has worked hard to continue to provide the services it needs to provide throughout all the cuts, through all the years, and throughout this recent pandemic. And it still does a damn good job because we understand what's needed locally. If we want to save money and we really support the localism that this government talks about, then surely it would be better to actually remove the county level of authority. Let's face it, it's got very few services left that it doesn't outsource and very few schools it now controls as they rapidly become academies. I truly believe the district council would be best placed to deliver these services. County council recognise that themselves because they rent some offices here to deliver services they need to deliver in this area. The district has proven that efficiencies can be made and we can provide jobs for local people in the local area, which protects the environment as well as boosting the local authority.
Thank you very much indeed, Deborah. Now I've got Councillor Sandra Peake.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sandra Peake, Langworth Ward. I would like to ask what happens to our parish councils, because I know our parish councils at the minute get a lot of great support from Bolsover District Council, for numerous things. My parish is on the periphery of Derbyshire. In fact, we've even got an NG20 postcode. It's not a Derbyshire one. So, and sometimes, you've got to look. I know people think it might not matter, but it is the small things what count where you live in a small village, like decent roads. Our roads are an absolute disgrace. In fact, we've got more holes in our road than what you can find in a colander. And I mean, we can laugh, but I had the opportunity to have a drive up Derbyshire a few weeks ago, and I thought it's quiet. I thought my engine had put out because there was no holes in the road. It was all smooth. It was lovely to be able to ride without your car banging down holes. So I think, we've got to look at what's going to happen to our parishes with the great support what we do get from the district council. And it's right what Councillor Josbris said, and a few others who said things in this room. Bolsover district is the backbone of our parishes. So I would like to know if anybody's got anything to say on what would happen to our parishes if we became a unitary authority.
I'll try, but no doubt Sarah will have some sort of comment on this. I said right at the beginning that in 1894 they decided that parishes would be bedrock of local government, and it's the only authority or that allows a group of people to actually set up a parish council. You know, you can't just wander and say, well, we're going to set up a district council, but you can petition whatever government or a local authority that whatever exists. You can just form your own parish council because there's no government support for it. It's purely a a pound for pound operation. So such as Shirebrook Town Council or Langworth Parish Council, if they spend £1 million, they've got to raise £1 million. But Sarah will probably be able to state that if districts disappear, and in response to Peter's comments, make no bones about it, you'll all be gone. If it becomes a unitary authority, all district councillors will be gone. Sarah.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, for a long time, governments have steadfastly promoted the increase in the number of parish and town councils. They've made the process simpler. It is actually dealt with by district councils through their electoral services departments. And indeed, in Bolsover, we've had a couple of parishes created over recent years. I've not seen anything to say that they're in or they're out. But that view that the government is behind parish and town councils, I haven't seen that that's changed either. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah.
But the support, Chair, what we get off Bolsover, would we get that from anywhere else? I don't think so.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Speaking from a perspective of a parish councillor, I tend to agree with you. Liz Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, businesses and, the real people out there running businesses, because obviously that's my portfolio. So that's where my concern is. And, we can all agree that you see the true mettle and the true value of any organisation when you have a crisis. And we've had a crisis over the last 18 months. The pandemic has affected many of our residents and many of our businesses. The District of Bolsover really stepped up to the plate during that terrible crisis. I think we paid out something in the region of 26 million overall. That's no small task. That is amazing. Revs and Ben's Economic Development did an amazing job. The business grants got really quite complicated at one point. There was mandatory, there was discretionary, additional restrictions, rounds 1 and 2. And people needed people to talk to. I did a bit of research in our department. They were taking, and this is, just one member of staff I happened to talk to, about 20 calls a day. They weren't a faceless email. They were a real person that they could talk to about the application process, about who was eligible, just help people through that. And I just, want people to think about how many businesses we saved, how many jobs we safeguarded, because it's really important. And the other thing is that the people of Bolsover, the businesses, those who are employed, they won't forget that. And I think it's quite politically naive to take away that valuable and hardworking tier of government. That's what I think. And it's funny that Deborah should mention something about county earlier, because I do actually think that whoever came up with this vision, Derbyshire, is thinking about it the wrong way round. Because looking at it, I think it could be county that could be subject to the administrative streamlining that they mention in the letter. I think that actually, like Deborah says, there's so much, the academisation of schools has gone on. They outsource so much these days. They deal with very little actually, compared to what they used to deal with. And it's the districts actually that are on the ground. We're the boots on the ground. We're the ones that do the work. We're the ones you can get hold of. And I think that actually they could perhaps take on some of the things that county do. And we, are already working very closely with other districts to provide those efficiencies and things like that. And we've already got those mechanisms in place. In fact, county, it's perhaps that middle management tier that might get cut, unfortunately. And I do think that those that are looking at this Vision Derbyshire thing, who've created it, need to be careful what they wish for. Because I'd be really interested to see that Price Waterhouse document. And, you know, they may well get their government reform, but it might be not the bit that they want to be cut that gets cut. And they might be the ones that are singled out for efficiencies. So I just wanted to say that about business.
Thank you very much indeed, Liz. Is there anybody else waiting at this stage? Andrew, do you want to come back? I'll come to you next, Nick.
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank Deborah for putting this idea in my head that getting rid of the county council. We've just had local elections. We've just had local elections for the county council. Nothing seems to improve with county council at all. I know they're restricted by what the money that they get from government, right? But there's some of the services that they provide are diabolical, really. Like when they had the first restriction, they cut child services. Like, so that were all the youth clubs gone in one fell swoop. Like, I've got a daughter who about 7 years ago, needed counselling. They'd got rid of counselling for children and they'd lumped it all in with adult. And a year and a half she would have had to have waited. So things aren't getting better at county. Like the potholes don't get filled in. What are they doing? I know they're restricted by money, but what are they doing? And perhaps at district level, if we were doing stuff like that, I know as the officers and the members of Bolsover District Council, we would probably make a better job of it than the county's doing.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to draw a parallel with centralisation of the police operations. I worked for the police for 30 years in Norfolk, and when I first started there, it was local police stations with local control rooms. During the late 90s, early 2000s, they centralised all those functions. All the local knowledge went out the window, which is what Councillor Joseph is referring to, will happen again. And the police service does no longer work. It doesn't function properly. It's no longer a proactive force, it's a reactive force. They rush from pillar to post. Their numbers are reduced because of cuts and so-called efficiencies. They're not efficiencies, they're cuts. And that's what's going to happen if we go down this unity authority road. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much indeed for making the observation of that comparison with the police. And I'm sure lots of other parish councillors in particular sat around these tables have shared the same experience, where you're literally down, if you're very lucky, to one police officer serving 4 or 5 villages, and you're very lucky to see that police officer more than once a fortnight. And that's if you're really lucky. Anne.
Yeah, thank you. I can sort of support Nick and what he's just said, having worked in the health service for 40 years, and the community nursing service went under a similar review. It was Cooper Waterhouse that did the review. The money it cost to have the audit of our services was the amount of money they reckoned that we could save. Now, actually, people at grassroots level could have told them, we all knew what the answer was, but, you know, but not only that, they did the same. They've centralised. They've lost all the local knowledge. So if somebody can phone up for a district nurse saying Kings Lynn, and somebody in Cromer answers the phone, they do not know the local geography, they do not know the local issues, and it's a mess.
Very much indeed. I can't see anybody else waiting to speak, but I just wanted to make one or two observations myself, if I may. Obviously, like others, and hopefully others of you, I've done a little bit of reading around. And it's very interesting when you start to look at some of the authorities that are proposing possibly to go into larger bodies, right? So, for example, one of the authorities that's looked at this very seriously and has got proposals going forward is North Yorkshire County Council. So that will, I imagine, involve parts of Durham, parts of North Yorkshire itself, and parts, I presume, of the old Northumbria and Cumbria areas. When you look at those areas, and I go there quite often, I have a family that live, my youngest daughter and her husband live in that part of the world. We also love that part of the world to holiday in, so I know that area quite well. It is as good as entirely rural. Their proposed areas are rural. It won't take in Newcastle or Middlesbrough or Sunderland. It'll be a rural arrangement. Now, when you look at Derbyshire, by contrast, you think if you go towards Manchester, many of us have driven over towards Manchester Airport to go on flights away, you're driving through major city. As soon as you get over the top of the hill and down the A628 and into that side of Manchester, it's incredibly built up and urban. So the thought you can actually approach Derbyshire as a any type of singleized authority, because that's repeated across the whole of Derbyshire, north, south, east, west, this complete mix of urban and rural and industrial and ex-mining, you begin to realize it's an absolute nonsense for this part of the world, an absolute nonsense. I'd also like to thank everybody who's made the point about our local accountability. That is absolutely crucial and key. And finally, the other point I wanted to make, and I raised this issue with Duncan just to bring it to his attention. We talk about whether or not we currently have a county council that can deliver. They have just begun, and people who are, like myself, a chair of school governors may be aware of this. They've just begun a consultation exercise with every school, every local authority school, and there are not too many of those about, across the whole of the county, asking if we are prepared to take a reduction in overall budget to make up a shortfall in special needs funding. When you think about what the implications are then for schooling going forward, we've heard so much in the last few months about the quality of school buildings in our country and how appalling they've become through lack of investment. And now we have this on top. I agree with you. It's the counties who need to be questioned, in particular Derbyshire County Council, whether it actually deserves to have an existence, because it's not serving us well. It doesn't serve us well on highway issues. It doesn't serve us on footpath issues. It took me 18 months to get them to replace a bridge that you're at risk of losing your life going across on a footpath in my own parish. So I support those comments. Does anybody else wish to make a contribution? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, before Duncan comes in with his motion, Chair, if I just go back to what I said right at the beginning. You know, when you get a situation like this, it becomes handbags at dawn, it becomes a skirmish. Everybody starts fighting, they want all sorts of different things. I'm not advocating that. What I'm advocating is that, you know, between us as local authority and as councillors, you know, we find a solution to it. Personally, I think the solution is that we stay as we are, and we perhaps look at helping other authorities overcome their particular difficulties, like Bolsover District Council always has done. And so, as I said, bearing in mind that if this turns into a full-scale skirmish, it will, of course, take your eye off what's happening in government. And, you know, we don't want to turn it into any sort of power grab. What's happening in Derbyshire today is occurring in Nottinghamshire. I know that one or two of their districts are starting to get annoyed with some of the antics being sort of propounded in Notts County Council. And, you know, you do start fighting. You start fighting, A, for survival, B, for power, and all sorts of different things. And we want to avoid that. So I think, you know, as local authorities, we should be turning to government and saying, fund us properly, fund us for responsibilities that we have to carry out. And, you know, rather than beat each other up, let's turn on central government, turn on Treasury and say, let's have some proper amount of cash to carry out the functions that we elected to do. But coming back to Peter again, I know some people think that you could be a district councillor, have a unitary authority and still be there. No, you can't. You'd be gone. Everybody would be gone. And so, yeah, so there you go, Chairman. I just wanted to clear a few little bits up. And,
Okay. Did you want to come back, Peter, at all?
Just thinking, and we keep mentioning funding and various other things. Have we got any proposals for how we do intend to be funded? I mean, why can't it be individual people? a lump of money and each individual receive that money, if you like, per head, like we do in Scotland or wherever it is. I don't know how we get funded, to be honest. I know in Germany and other places it's federal and everybody pays taxes in and they get the money back. But what are we saying about funding? Everyone mentions funding, but nobody wants to go a solution for it. What do you suggest? Income tax, more national insurance? What do we suggest to get this funding?
Personally, Peter, I think we pay a lot of money to central government. People pay in various different ways. It's not just income tax. I mean, even this national insurance proposal of 1.25% will not be going to adult care, it'll be going to NHS, and all of a sudden it gets fudged on edges. There's also, we get taxed probably more than any other country in Europe, even down to petrol, tax on petrol and so on. So, how do we propose, how would we go forward? I don't know. There'd have to be, I mean, this is why you've got Treasury. This is why you've got an elected government. They know exactly what's what. If we've got to start producing solutions for central government to operate, then you might as well go back to the generic letter and say, thanks for the letter, let us take over and sort it all out for you, because that's what they've done. Even during pandemic, it was, we need this, this is what we want, but we'll leave it with you to make your own mind up how you're going to do it. I mean, I don't want to get into any political argument. I'm trying to look at this objectively, but at the end of the day, central government serves a purpose. It raises taxes, it distributes cash to local authorities. Local authorities raise their own council tax. I mean, you can remember the debacle with poll tax and what happened with that. So that's your individual tax that you referred to, Peter. We don't want to go down that path, do we? So, it's about working together, and local authorities need to pressure government and say, look, we need to have a coherent and sensible funding regime for the provision of local services. It's not for local authorities to keep fighting each other to get what they justly deserve. For people that they represent, that justly pay for it. So I don't know, Peter.
Right, I'm now going to invite Duncan to move a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's been a good debate this morning and discussion, and I hope that there's a lot of eyes have been opened with the comments made by various members there. I happen to think that we are a good council, and I think that we've resolved our financial ways and means of being able to progress and provide services. Every member in this chamber, your sole purpose, quite frankly, as an elected member, is to provide services. You don't want to be an accountant. You're not. That's not what you're not. You're here to provide services, and the services will be affected if this goes ahead. I tell you now, I have been involved with previously, and I have, and it's not worked out. There's not a panacea for making money or overcoming your problems. You're the people who was elected. Nobody's asked them yet. They're asking the politicians. It's the people that should be asked, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to ask our residents and put it in front of them and ask them where they are. There was a reason why I asked for a recorded vote earlier on. Because when you have your vote, people should know how you vote and the way that you vote and what you voted for. And that will happen to the Member of Parliament in due course as well. But I would like to move, Chair. I move that this council supports the continuation of two-tier government in Derbyshire, and also urge other Derbyshire councils to do the same. And that the leader of Bozo District Council be empowered to explore other alternatives if necessary. I move. I move that this council supports the continuation of two-tier government in Derbyshire, and also urge other Derbyshire councils to do the same. And that the leader of Bozo District Council be empowered to explore other alternatives if necessary.
Thank you. Thank you. Does that receive a seconder, please? falls back in shock. I'm going to take Sandra Peake. She got her hand up first. Natalie, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Just to go to Sarah Sternberg, as a cabinet member for Derbyshire County Council, am I okay to vote on this?
I think, Chair, your Councillor Hoy is right to make a declaration, but yes, it's an expression of opinion of the council.
Thank you, Sarah.
So was you advised that Natalie does need to express
Sorry to be unclear, Chair. What I was saying is she's right to declare that she is a member of the county council.
that's all, okay,
And that's all she could speak and vote.
thank you.
yeah.
All right. Yeah, okay, are you asking for a recorded vote? There's been a request for a recorded vote. Does that receive support? Yes, it does. That receives a lot of support. Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Because we are, as you know, out of standing orders. Again, for or against, before I put this to ask for the recorded vote to be taken. No, thank you. Can I just, on a personal note, thank everybody for the very frank way in which they have contributed this morning to this debate. And as soon as we move out of the vote, we will resume standing orders. Right, who's going to do it? Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As before, I'll call your name and ask you to say for, against, or abstain. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Bowler. Councillor Bullock. Councillor Cannon.
For.
Councillor A. Clark. Councillor N. Clark.
For.
Councillor Clifton. Councillor Clough. Councillor D. Dixon.
For.
Councillor M. Dixon.
For.
Councillor Downs. Councillor Fox.
For.
Councillor Fritchley.
For.
Councillor Hales. Councillor Heffer. Councillor Hoy.
Abstain.
Councillor Joesbury. Councillor Kane. Councillor McGregor.
For.
Councillor Munro.
For.
Councillor E. Parkin.
For.
Councillor G. Parkin.
For.
Councillor Peake. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tate. Councillor Turner. Councillor Watson. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. So the result is 29 for, none against, and there was one abstention. So thank you very much indeed for doing that for us. Right, so in closing, I just wanted, and I suppose it was prompted in a way, and I'm sure it's been prompted for many of you by what's been on the BBC in the last 48 hours. I just wanted to raise with you that tomorrow, just to raise your awareness, that tomorrow marks the 20th anniversary of the horrific events that took place on the 9th of September 2001 in New York. And just spare a thought for the people of New York and all the other people who were impacted by that ghastly, ghastly event. So just thought, you know, if you care to give that bit of thought, I will refer to it tomorrow when I'm unfurling the flag, because I think we need to think a bit more internationally as well when we're going through that process. And with that, can I thank everybody for their attendance, wish you all a very pleasant rest of day, and thank you once again for your contributions to this morning's debate. Thank you.